We live in the most connected era in human history, and yet more people feel alone than ever before. We carry thousands of contacts in our pockets, instant access to anyone, anywhere, at any time. We can send a message across the world in seconds. We can see faces, hear voices, share moments instantly. And still, something feels empty. Something feels missing. A quiet, persistent loneliness that doesn't go away no matter how busy life becomes. This is not the kind of loneliness that comes from being physically alone. It is deeper than that. It exists even when people are surrounded by others. It shows up in crowded rooms, in full offices, in busy homes. It's the loneliness of not being truly seen, not being deeply known, not being genuinely connected. And almost no one talks about it honestly. We scroll more, talk less. We message constantly, but rarely say what we actually feel. We stay busy, not because we are fulfilled, but because stillness forces us to confront the silence inside. Modern life has trained us to fear quiet moments, because quiet moments ask uncomfortable questions. Am I actually connected to anyone? Would someone notice if I disappeared? Do I really belong anywhere? Loneliness today doesn't announce itself loudly. It whispers. It disguises itself as productivity, entertainment, ambition, and independence. It hides behind packed schedules and glowing screens. It convinces us that needing people is weakness, that self-sufficiency is strength, and that asking for connection is something to be ashamed of. We were never meant to live like this. Human beings evolved in small groups. Families, tribes, communities where everyone mattered because everyone was known, where your presence made a difference and your absence was felt. Meaning came not from achievement, but from belonging. Identity came not from status, but from relationships. Survival itself depended on connection. But modern life rewrote the rules. We built systems that reward independence over interdependence, speed over presence, efficiency over depth. We learned to optimize everything except our relationships. We measured success in money, titles, followers, and achievements, while quietly losing the one thing that makes any of those meaningful: human connection. And the strangest part is this: most people feel lonely, but almost everyone believes they are the only one. We suffer privately while assuming everyone else has figured it out. We look around and see smiling faces, curated lives, filtered happiness, and we conclude that something must be wrong with us, that we are failing at life in some invisible way. But this is not a personal failure. It is a cultural one. Modern life didn't make us lonely overnight. It happened gradually, so slowly that we adapted without realizing what we were giving up. Families became smaller and more fragmented. Neighborhoods became quieter and more anonymous. Work replaced community. Screens replaced conversations. Convenience replaced commitment. And over time, loneliness stopped feeling like a problem and started feeling normal. We don't eat together the way we used to. We don't talk without distractions. We don't rely on neighbors. We don't spend unstructured time with people across generations. Children grow up surrounded by technology, but disconnected from elders. Older people grow old surrounded by people, but invisible to them. Everyone is busy, everyone is tired, and everyone is quietly lonely. And yet, we rarely name it. Because admitting loneliness feels like admitting weakness. Because our culture celebrates independence so loudly that dependence feels like failure. Because we've been taught that needing others means we're not strong enough on our own. But the truth is the opposite. Loneliness is not proof of weakness. It is proof that something essential is missing. It is the body's signal that we are living in ways that don't align with our nature. Just as hunger tells us we need food, loneliness tells us we need connection. Ignoring it doesn't make us stronger. It makes us numb. This loneliness shows up differently for everyone. For some, it looks like constant distraction. For others, it looks like exhaustion that rest doesn't fix. For many, it looks like success that still feels empty. You did everything you were told to do. You stayed busy. You stayed productive. You stayed connected online. And yet, at the end of the day, something still feels hollow. That feeling is not random. It is the cost of a life built without roots. And the most dangerous part of modern loneliness is not the pain itself. It's how quietly we accept it, how quickly we normalize it, how rarely we question the systems that created it. We blame ourselves instead of asking whether the way we live makes genuine connection possible at all. This video is not about blaming technology. It's not about attacking modern life. It's about asking a question most people are too distracted to ask. What do we lose while gaining everything else? And what happens if we continue pretending this loneliness is just the price of progress? Because if no one talks about it, if no one names it, then nothing changes. And an entire generation grows up believing that feeling alone in a crowded world is just how life is supposed to feel. It isn't. And once you understand why modern life is making us lonely, you can no longer unsee it. Modern loneliness didn't arrive like a storm. It arrived like a slow leak. Quiet, almost invisible, so gradual that most people never noticed when things began to change. There was no single moment when communities collapsed or families disconnected. There was no announcement that said life would become more isolated. It happened in small, reasonable steps, each one seeming harmless on its own. We started valuing convenience more than presence, efficiency more than depth, speed more than patience. These weren't bad intentions. They were solutions to real problems. Longer work hours, longer commutes, higher expectations, constant pressure to perform. Technology promised to save time, to connect us, to make life easier. And in many ways, it did. But it also quietly replaced the spaces where human connection used to grow. Families stopped eating together, not because they didn't care, but because schedules no longer aligned. Work didn't end at sunset anymore. Messages followed us home. Phones sat on the table during dinner. Conversations became shorter, interrupted, fragmented. Everyone was present physically, but somewhere else mentally. And over time, this became normal. Neighborhoods changed too. Doors that were once open became locked. Front porches disappeared. People moved more often, stayed for shorter periods, learned fewer names. We began to live near people without ever knowing them. Safety increased, convenience improved, but familiarity faded. The kind of connection that comes from repeated, unplanned encounters slowly disappeared. Work replaced community in ways we didn't anticipate. For many people, coworkers became the primary source of human interaction. But work relationships are conditional. They exist as long as productivity does. When jobs change, people disappear. There is no long-term bond, no shared history beyond deadlines and performance reviews. And yet, for millions, this became the main social structure of adult life. At the same time, we started outsourcing connection to screens. Conversations became texts. Phone calls became notifications. Shared experiences became likes. We learned to communicate quickly, efficiently, and safely. No awkward pauses. No emotional risk. No vulnerability unless we could edit it first. We could appear connected without actually being close. And this created a strange illusion. We felt socially active while emotionally isolated. We interacted constantly, but rarely deeply. We knew what people were doing, but not how they were feeling. We saw highlights, not struggles. And when we compared our private loneliness to everyone else's public happiness, we assumed we were the problem. The breakdown of community wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. Clubs faded. Religious and cultural gatherings became optional instead of essential. Multi-generational households became rare. Elders were separated from daily life, their wisdom stored away instead of shared. Children grew up without regular exposure to different ages, different perspectives, different rhythms of life. Life became segmented. Work life, social life, online life, personal life, each one isolated from the other. We performed different versions of ourselves in each space, but rarely felt whole in any of them. Connection requires continuity, and modern life is built on fragmentation. Even leisure changed. Time that was once spent together became time spent consuming. Entertainment replaced interaction. Watching replaced talking. And because it required less effort, it slowly became the default. It was easier to sit beside someone and stare at separate screens than to sit across from them and truly engage. None of this was malicious. No one planned to make the world lonelier. It happened because we optimized for everything except belonging. We designed lives that were functional but not relational, comfortable but not connected, efficient but not human. And then something else happened. We started glorifying independence in ways that quietly shamed connection. We praised people for needing no one. We admired self-made success stories that erased the communities behind them. We told ourselves that asking for help meant weakness, that emotional needs were personal flaws to be managed privately. This narrative cut us off from each other. When people feel lonely, they don't reach out. They retreat. They assume they should be able to handle it on their own. They stay silent, and silence creates distance. Distance creates misunderstanding. Misunderstanding creates further isolation. The cycle continues, reinforced by a culture that rewards self-sufficiency and punishes vulnerability. Loneliness also became harder to recognize because it didn't look the way it used to. It wasn't always sadness. Sometimes it was numbness. Sometimes it was irritability. Sometimes it was constant restlessness. Sometimes it was the inability to enjoy success. People felt something was wrong, but they couldn't name it. And when you can't name something, you can't fix it. The most painful part is that many people blame themselves for a problem that was never meant to be solved individually. They try self-improvement, productivity hacks, motivation, distractions. They work harder. They stay busier. They consume more content. But none of that addresses the root cause. Because loneliness is not the absence of activity. It is the absence of meaningful connection. Modern life didn't just reduce the time we spend with people. It reduced the depth of those interactions. We talk more, but reveal less. We communicate constantly, but rarely listen fully. We share updates, but avoid truths. And slowly, relationships lose their weight. This is how loneliness becomes normal. Not because people want it, but because the structures of daily life no longer support sustained human connection. We live in systems that keep us moving, clicking, producing, and consuming, but rarely staying still with one another. And when loneliness becomes normal, it becomes invisible. People stop asking why they feel disconnected. They assume adulthood is supposed to feel this way. That growing up means growing apart. That longing for community is childish nostalgia instead of a legitimate human need. But that longing doesn't go away. It waits. And in the next part, we'll look at how this quiet loneliness reshaped our minds, our behavior, and even the way we see ourselves, without us ever realizing what was happening. Loneliness doesn't just change how we feel. It changes how we think. It reshapes the way we see ourselves, the way we interpret other people, and the way we move through the world. And the most dangerous part is that this transformation happens quietly, without dramatic warning signs. When people lack consistent, meaningful connection, their sense of identity weakens. We learn who we are through relationships, through being seen, understood, challenged, and valued by others. When those mirrors disappear, we begin to define ourselves by external markers instead. Productivity, achievement, attention, validation. Numbers replace names. Metrics replace meaning. Without strong relational grounding, self-worth becomes fragile. It depends on performance rather than presence, on outcomes rather than existence. People start asking themselves not "who am I?" but "how am I doing compared to others?" And comparison thrives in isolation. Loneliness makes people hyper-aware of rejection and blind to acceptance. A delayed message feels like dismissal. A neutral comment feels like criticism. Silence feels personal. The mind fills in gaps with self-blame because there is no relational feedback to correct it. Over time, this creates a constant low-level anxiety, a sense of being unwanted even when no one has said so. This psychological strain pushes people in two opposite directions. Some withdraw. They become quieter, more guarded, more self-contained. They tell themselves they don't need anyone, that independence is safer than disappointment. Others overextend. They seek validation relentlessly, shaping themselves into whatever version gets the most approval. Both responses come from the same place, a lack of secure belonging. Loneliness also distorts emotional regulation. When people don't have safe spaces to process emotions with others, feelings either get suppressed or spill out uncontrollably. There is no middle ground, no shared emotional language, no reassurance that emotions are normal and survivable. So people cope alone, often through distraction, overwork, or numbing behaviors. Over time, this isolation dulls empathy. Not because people stop caring, but because caring becomes exhausting when you're already emotionally depleted. When your own needs go unmet, it becomes harder to notice the needs of others. This creates a subtle social coldness that further deepens disconnection. Modern loneliness also fractures attention. Deep connection requires sustained focus, listening, presence, patience. But a lonely mind is restless. It seeks stimulation to escape discomfort. Scrolling replaces reflection. Noise replaces stillness. And without stillness, it becomes difficult to understand what we actually feel or need. Perhaps the most painful effect is how loneliness convinces people they are fundamentally unlovable, not in obvious ways, but in quiet assumptions. If I mattered, someone would reach out. If I was important, someone would notice. These thoughts rarely get spoken, but they shape behavior. People stop initiating, stop opening up, stop believing connection is possible, and this belief becomes self-fulfilling. Loneliness also changes how people experience time. Days feel busy but empty. Weeks blur together. Life feels like it's happening somewhere else, to someone else. Without shared milestones, shared rituals, and shared memories, time loses texture. Moments pass without anchoring meaning. This is why success doesn't cure loneliness. You can be admired and still feel unknown. You can be surrounded and still feel invisible. Without genuine connection, recognition feels hollow. Praise feels temporary. Achievements feel strangely unsatisfying, as if something essential is missing from the celebration. And then there is shame. People are ashamed of feeling lonely in a world that claims to be hyperconnected. Ashamed to admit they want deeper relationships. Ashamed to say they feel unseen. This shame keeps them silent, and silence keeps them isolated. The cycle continues, reinforced by the belief that everyone else is doing fine. But they're not. Loneliness has become one of the most common emotional experiences of modern life, and yet one of the least acknowledged. People talk about stress, burnout, and anxiety, but rarely name the root beneath them: the absence of consistent human connection. And when something is unnamed, it is easily misunderstood. Loneliness doesn't mean you are broken. It doesn't mean you are failing at life. It means you are human in a system that no longer supports human needs. It means your nervous system is reacting to disconnection the way it was designed to. The tragedy is that many people try to fix this by changing themselves instead of changing how they live. They try to become tougher, quieter, less needy. They shrink their emotional needs to fit a world that has little space for them. But this doesn't heal loneliness. It buries it. And buried loneliness doesn't disappear. It leaks out in subtle ways: irritability, numbness, cynicism, a sense of detachment from life itself. People start going through the motions, present in body but absent in spirit. This is not the life humans were meant to live. And in the next part, we'll look at how modern systems, expectations, and definitions of success actively reinforce this loneliness, even while promising fulfillment. Modern life constantly tells us that if we are lonely, the solution is to become more successful, get busier, achieve more, build something, improve yourself, optimize your time, fill your schedule. And at first, this advice feels empowering. It gives the illusion of control. If loneliness is a problem, then productivity feels like an answer. But over time, something strange happens. The more people chase success in the modern sense, the less connected they often feel. Not because success is wrong, but because of how we've defined it. Modern success is deeply individualistic. It rewards independence over interdependence, speed over depth, output over presence. It asks, what can you accomplish? Not, who are you becoming with others? Hustle culture quietly reframes human worth around productivity. Time becomes something to extract value from, not something to share. Relationships become secondary, squeezed into the leftover hours after work, goals, and self-improvement routines are complete. And because those goals are endless, relationships are endlessly postponed. People don't stop caring about connection. They just start treating it like a luxury rather than a necessity. Modern success also encourages constant self-focus. Branding yourself, building yourself, improving yourself, fixing yourself. And while self-awareness can be healthy, excessive self-focus can be isolating. When life becomes a personal project, other people become either competitors, audiences, or distractions from progress. This mindset subtly discourages vulnerability. Vulnerability slows things down. It introduces uncertainty. It requires time, emotional availability, and the risk of being affected by someone else. Hustle culture prefers control, efficiency, emotional neutrality. The less you need from others, the more strong you appear. So people learn to perform strength instead of practicing connection. Another cost of modern success is mobility. Advancement often requires moving. New cities, new jobs, new environments. And while mobility creates opportunity, it disrupts continuity. Community needs time to form. Trust needs repetition. Belonging needs consistency. When people are constantly uprooted, relationships remain shallow by necessity. You can't build a village if you're always passing through. This is why so many people have impressive resumes, but fragile support systems. They've learned how to succeed in systems, but not how to stay rooted in relationships. Their lives look full from the outside, but feel strangely empty from within. Modern work structures also blur boundaries. Work follows people home through devices. Even when physically alone, people are mentally occupied. Conversations are interrupted. Attention is divided. Presence becomes partial. And connection without presence feels thin and unsatisfying. Loneliness doesn't require physical isolation. It only requires emotional absence. Even leisure has become optimized. Relaxation is productive. Hobbies are monetized. Social interactions are curated. Spontaneity disappears. There's no room for slow, unstructured togetherness. No space for sitting with someone without a purpose. And without purposeless time, intimacy struggles to survive. Modern success narratives also promote self-sufficiency as the highest virtue. Needing others is framed as weakness. Depending on community is seen as inefficiency. Emotional needs are something to manage privately, not something to share collectively. But humans were never designed to be self-sufficient. We were designed to be interdependent, to rely on each other not just for survival, but for meaning. When people internalize the belief that they must handle everything alone, they stop reaching out. They stop asking for help. They stop sharing struggles. Over time, they become emotionally isolated even when surrounded by others. And the loneliest people are often the ones who appear the most put together. There's also a deeper contradiction at the heart of modern success. It promises fulfillment, but often delivers distraction. It keeps people busy enough to avoid confronting emptiness, but not connected enough to resolve it. Life becomes a series of tasks rather than a shared experience. Moments pass, achievements stack up, but something essential feels missing. This is why burnout and loneliness often coexist. Burnout isn't just exhaustion from work. It's exhaustion from living without enough meaning, connection, and emotional nourishment. You can't sustain energy in isolation forever. Eventually, something gives. People begin to question why, despite doing everything right, they still feel disconnected. Why progress doesn't feel satisfying. Why rest doesn't feel restorative. Why success feels lonely. The uncomfortable answer is that modern definitions of success were never designed to meet human emotional needs. They were designed to maximize output, not belonging. Efficiency, not intimacy. Growth, not grounding. And when a system doesn't support connection, loneliness becomes a feature, not a flaw. This doesn't mean ambition is wrong. It means ambition without community is incomplete. It means progress without connection is hollow. It means success without shared meaning leaves people emotionally malnourished. Technology promised to bring us closer together, and in some ways, it did. We can reach anyone, anywhere, instantly. We can share moments in real time. We can stay connected across distance. But what technology actually changed wasn't access to people. It changed the nature of connection itself. Modern connection is fast, frequent, and shallow. Messages replace conversations. Reactions replace responses. Presence is replaced by availability. And while these tools keep us in touch, they rarely make us feel understood. Digital interaction removes many of the elements that make connection nourishing. Tone, timing, body language, silence, shared environment. Without these, communication becomes transactional, efficient, emotionally thin. You can talk all day and still feel unseen. Technology also allows connection without commitment. You can engage when it's convenient and disappear when it's not. There's no shared obligation, no rhythm, no continuity. And without continuity, relationships struggle to deepen. Social media intensifies this problem. It turns human lives into content, moments into highlights, connection into performance. People don't share who they are. They share what will be received well. Authenticity becomes risky. Vulnerability becomes optional. When people are constantly exposed to curated versions of others' lives, loneliness quietly transforms into comparison. You're not just alone. You feel behind, less interesting, less connected, less fulfilled. Even when you know these images aren't real, your nervous system still reacts to them. Social platforms also fragment attention. You are present everywhere and nowhere at once. Conversations compete with notifications. Even when sitting with someone, part of your awareness is elsewhere. And connection requires full attention to feel safe and real. Technology creates the illusion of social saturation. Hundreds of contacts, thousands of followers, endless updates. But the human nervous system doesn't register quantity. It registers depth. Without depth, abundance feels empty. Convenience culture further reinforces isolation. Food arrives without interaction. Entertainment streams without shared experience. Services replace neighbors. Efficiency replaces community. Slowly, everyday human interactions disappear. Small moments that once created social fabric are removed. Chatting with a shop owner, asking a neighbor for help, waiting together, running into familiar faces. These micro-connections mattered more than we realized. They reminded us that we belonged to a living social environment. Now, life is frictionless but emotionally sterile. Technology also reshapes expectations. People expect instant responses, immediate availability, constant engagement. And when those expectations aren't met, relationships feel strained. Delays are interpreted as disinterest. Silence feels like rejection. But humans weren't meant to be constantly reachable. We were meant to be periodically present. Always-on connectivity creates emotional fatigue and shallow engagement. Loneliness deepens when people replace connection with consumption. Instead of reaching out, they scroll. Instead of sharing feelings, they distract themselves. Instead of being with someone, they watch others be together on screens. Over time, this trains the brain to associate discomfort with avoidance rather than engagement. Connection becomes something to simulate rather than practice. Perhaps the most subtle damage technology causes is how it changes self-perception. When worth is measured through likes, views, and responses, identity becomes externally regulated. People begin to feel real only when they are noticed. And when attention fades, so does self-esteem. Digital spaces also reward outrage and extremes. Nuance disappears. Empathy weakens. Conversations become polarized. This erodes trust, making people less willing to open up. If every disagreement becomes a battle, safety disappears. So people retreat. They observe instead of participate, consume instead of contribute, watch instead of engage. And yet, despite all this connectivity, people report feeling lonelier than ever. This isn't because technology is evil. It's because we use tools designed for efficiency to meet needs that require slowness. We asked algorithms to replace rituals, platforms to replace presence, notifications to replace belonging. They can't. Human connection requires effort, time, imperfection, shared vulnerability. And technology, by design, minimizes all of these. Convenience makes life easier, but it doesn't make it meaningful. As real-world connection weakens, people begin to feel disconnected not just from others, but from themselves. Emotions become harder to identify. Desires become muted. Life feels flat, like something essential has been removed. And this is where modern loneliness becomes existential. It's no longer just about being alone. It's about feeling unreal, unanchored, disconnected from life itself. Not quick fixes, not hacks, but a reorientation toward connection that restores meaning, depth, and belonging in a disconnected world. If loneliness is the condition of modern life, then the solution isn't louder noise or faster movement. It's a return, not backward, but inward. A return to what makes us human in the first place. Connection doesn't start with fixing society. It starts with choosing presence, with choosing to slow down in a world that rewards speed, with choosing depth in a culture addicted to surface, with choosing people over performance. The truth is, most people are not asking for more followers, more success, or more stimulation. They are asking to be seen, to be known, to matter to someone in a way that can't be measured. And the quiet hope is this: loneliness is not irreversible. Human connection is not extinct. It's dormant, waiting for permission to exist again. Real connection doesn't require perfection. It requires courage. The courage to initiate, to stay, to listen without multitasking, to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it, to be honest instead of impressive. It looks simple, but in modern life, it's revolutionary. It means choosing conversations that don't fit into a time slot, meals without screens, friendships that aren't optimized, relationships that are allowed to be messy, slow, and real. It means rebuilding rituals, shared routines, weekly check-ins, regular gatherings, moments that repeat often enough to become anchors. Belonging is built through repetition, not intensity. It also means reclaiming interdependence, allowing yourself to need others, letting people help you, letting your presence matter to someone else. Loneliness thrives where self-sufficiency is idolized. Connection grows where mutual care is normalized. We don't need to connect with everyone. We just need to connect deeply with a few. And maybe that starts with noticing the people already around us. The neighbor you've never spoken to, the friend you haven't checked on, the family member who feels distant but still hopes for closeness. Connection doesn't require a perfect moment. It only requires a first one. Loneliness tells us we are alone in how we feel. But this video exists because that isn't true. Millions feel this, quietly, privately, wondering if something is wrong with them. There isn't. What's wrong is a way of living that forgot how much humans need each other. And remembering that is powerful. If this message resonated with you, don't rush past it. Sit with it. Reflect on it. And if you feel comfortable, share your experience. Not because you owe anyone vulnerability, but because someone else might need to hear they're not alone. Stories reconnect us to each other. Silence isolates us. This channel exists to talk about the things modern life avoids. The emotional truths beneath the surface. The quiet struggles people carry without words. And the ways we can live more meaningful, grounded lives in a disconnected world. If you want more reflections like this, thoughtful, honest, and human, then stay here. Subscribe, not just to support the channel, but to stay connected to conversations that matter. And remember this, loneliness is not a personal failure. It's a signal, and signals are meant to be answered.